Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of This Week in Magic Online Finance. My name is Chaz Andres, and as always, we're going to get started with the news. The big story this week, of course, is that the very first Mythic Championship just wrapped up in Cleveland, showcasing a very fun and diverse standard format. There weren't really any new decks, or really too many variants on established decks, but that doesn't mean the event can't tell us a lot about the current state and future of Standard. Now, of course, anyone who followed the event can tell you that Mono Blue Tempo was pretty much the darling of the event from start to finish. WotC began highlighting it on stream early on, 3 copies of it made the top 8, and no other deck had more than 1 copy in the top 8, and of course, Autumn Burchett took down the entire tournament with one of the most impressive and inspirational performances I've ever seen. I have to believe a lot of people are going to have been watching that event and they're going to want to try out Autumn's deck. The other thing about Mono Blue is that it's super cheap, especially on MTGO, so a lot of people may just end up buying in order to simply try the deck out. I've already seen cards like Tempest Djinn and Terramander start to climb in price, and I expect that to continue over the next couple of days. None of these cards are ever going to be worth Hydroid Crisis money, of course, but that doesn't mean they can't gain quite a bit nonetheless. Doubling or even tripling in price is not out of the question and is expected on some of these cards. Meanwhile, both Esper Control and Bant Nexus look pretty darn good once you start measuring things like conversion percentage and other sort of mathy ways to figure out which decks perform the best at the event. Now, granted, I don't think a ton of players are going to go out and look at all the math and say, oh, I'm going to go build this deck because of X or Y or anything else, but it is worth knowing that the underlying metrics say that both Esper Control and Bant Nexus are firmly in Standard's top tier right now. Esper Control seems like a pretty good buy to me if you're looking for a Standard deck to play right now. Bant Nexus, well, maybe not so much. I'm still worried that Wizards of the Coast is going to ban Nexus of Fate across other parts of Standard as opposed to just an Arena Best of 1, so I'm pumping the brakes on that one right now. And lastly, Arclight Phoenix is actually back in Standard. The current best version of Is It Drake's runs 4 full copies of Arclight Phoenix again. It's basically last season's deck, the one that Luis Scott Vargas took into the top 8 in Cleveland, and that should only mean good things for Arclight Phoenix's short-term price future. The card has actually been really on a roll recently thanks to its modern play in MTGO, and well, being played in Standard can't hurt. Let's move on to gaining ground, where in Standard the card that gained the most ground this week was Kaya Orzhov Usurper, which gained about 3.5 tickets from 4.5 up to 8. And this card actually started gaining before this week, and it's not going to finish gaining this week. It has just been on this upward trajectory ever since it was about 1.5 tickets back in early February. So what happened here? Well, we can at least partially blame Saffron Olive. I mean, he did run a Kaya deck on stream earlier this week that also caused Surgical Extraction and Extirpate to spike a little, but that's not the entire story with Kaya. The powerful Planeswalker has actually been seeing more and more tournament play, especially out of the sideboard. It looked great on camera in the top 8 this weekend, so I really think that this card can be stable in the 10 to 15 ticket range for at least a little while. If you've been holding off on picking Kaya up for your collection, you should at least make sure you have 1 or 2. Let's move over to Modern, where the card that gained the most ground this week was Mishra's Bauble, ticking up about 3 tickets from 13 up to 16. And this is notable because Mishra's Bauble spent a lot of 2018 as an afterthought in Modern, but it's showing up a lot more in a lot more of the better decks in the format, things like Grixis Death Shadow, which is really good right now, and 4-Color Prison, which is probably the reason for this gain and probably the most popular deck in Modern, at least this week. The other thing to remember here is that Iconic Masters was not opened in extensive quantities on MTGO because the EV online was terrible. And of course we know that Cold Snap was not opened in heavy quantities on MTGO because who opened any packs of Cold Snap anywhere? Regardless, this actually gives Mishra's Bauble a higher ceiling online than in Paper Magic. 20 tickets is not unreasonable, 25 is not out of the question. Really what it just comes down to is when or if the Modern Index is going to rebound. Modern didn't really have a great week. It was a little bit sluggish leading up to the Pro Tour, which maybe could be expected, but regardless, this card continues to do well and I expect it to at least hit 20 in the near future. Let's move on now to our biggest loser, where in Standard it was yet again Teferi, Hero of Dominaria. This $60 card in Paper Magic lost another 5 tickets on MTGO this week. It is now down to just 7.5. I mean, at least it finally does appear to have reached bottom. It is stabilized at that figure, so I guess you can buy in if you want. I'm just still not certain how this card, which was 40 tickets as recently as mid-November, has fallen so far. So what happened here? Well, WotC did give everyone a free Teferi over on Arena, and doesn't really see play in Modern, and Dominaria is not really eligible for set redemption anymore, so yeah. I mean, you can buy in if you want, it's certainly not going any lower, but I'm not going to invest in standard cards that are not eligible for redemption that have fallen so far already. Right now, I need to see at least one of those cards make a big rally first. So for now, I'm gonna say, buy in if you want. It does appear to be undervalued, but I'm definitely not going to speculate on cards like this at the moment. Let's move over to Modern, where the biggest loser of the week was Horizon Canopy, dropping another 3 tickets from 20 down to 17. And folks, I think it's time for me to finally throw in the towel on this one. I know I've been saying that Horizon Canopy's been undervalued for a while right now, but the best Horizon Canopy decks, things like Humans and Bant Spirits, are firmly in the format second tier right now, at least in terms of popularity. And with the rise of other decks like Grixis Death Shadow and Dregs that don't really use Horizon Canopy, I don't know. I still feel like the entirety of Modern on MTGO is undervalued right now, but if I'm betting on an overall format resurgence, this is probably not the card I'm going to lean on first. Now, our sneak of the week this week is Verdant Catacombs, and I didn't just pick the card because it has cat in its name. Verdant Catacombs spent most of the fall at around the 10 ticket mark before dropping to 6 tickets or so earlier this month. 6 tickets proved a bridge too far. It's been climbing ever since. It's up to about 9 tickets now and continuing to rise. I don't think this is a super lucrative spec because I don't really see this card spending much time at or around the 15 ticket mark, but it's not going to be 6 again. It's probably not even going to be 9 again for a while. So if you've been holding off on buying these, you need them for your personal collection, I'd pick them up now. I think 11, 12, 13 tickets, that's more in line for where it's going to be stabilizing. As always, we're going to end the week by taking a look at the MTGO Trader sales data over the past 7 days. And this gives us a great idea of which cards are selling the best right now, regardless of price increases or decreases. Looking at overall sales by volume, I want to talk a little bit about Path to Exile. Path to Exile was the #2 most sold card of the week, and it's seeing more and more play in Modern. The card bottomed out at about 0.2 tickets back during the crash. It's up to about 0.5 tickets now, but it actually spent most of 2017 and 2018 somewhere between the 1 and 2 ticket mark. So this isn't a super lucrative spec. I don't think it's gonna spike up to 5 or 6 tickets, but these are the kind of cards you definitely want to pick up while they're cheap because they're staples and they can improve your overall collection value. You'll be able to cash out at some point in the future for more than you paid, and if not, you have really useful cards to play with, so what's not to love? Now, in terms of overall sales by price, the top 3 cards are the same as they were last week, and the week before that, and the week before that. You've got Arclight Phoenix, Surgical Extraction, and Hydroid Krasis. They're simply the 3 most important cards on MTGO, and nothing's going to change that, at least for another couple of weeks, I would guess. There is a little bit of a surprise in that #4 slot, though, with Chalice of the Void, a card I haven't seen up here in a while. Now, I haven't highlighted Chalice yet on a sneak of the week, but I probably could. The card bottomed out around 12 during the crash, it's up to 23 now and continuing to rise, and looking at this price chart, I was honestly surprised by how robust it is. I also like the fact that Chalice of the Void is probably not going to be reprinted again anytime soon since it was just reprinted last year. This is a fairly solid spec, and I think buying in now and planning to sell in a month or 2 could pay some pretty big dividends. It's seeing play in the 4-color Prison deck that's really popular in Modern right now, so there definitely are reasons why this card is continuing to rise. And that's all I've got for you this week. Thank you so much for joining me. My name is Chaz Andres, and I will see you again next Monday morning for another episode of This Week in Magic Online Finance.